Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Sources are reporting that Daniel Ricciardo to Mercedes is a done deal and he will be joining Mercedes as probably their reserve driver for 2023. Is this a way back into the Formula 1 starting driver lineup for Daniel Ricciardo? Is there ever a world in which he replaces one of their drivers in 2024? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Some drama to start out the video here with. Firstly, we saw this Shayla Ann Rao, currently works for Formula 1. There's been some rumours coming out of the Red Bull camp that that's how the leaks happened to Mercedes over the budget cap, because they used to be partners with Toto. I think she used to be, right-hand woman or whatever for Toto Wolff. So there's been some drama about that, and Toto Wolff has responded to this saying it's effectively completely BS and that it's an attempt by Red Bull to shift the focus away from the actual breach. And but interesting question, right, about where did that leak come from? How did the paddock know about a couple of weeks before it was announced the Red Bull had breached the cap? So that's still a question that is ongoing. This another one from Martin Brundle, because we saw a few days ago the Ted Kravitz versus Max Verstappen, Sky versus Red Bull drama, and Max Verstappen was kind of singling out Ted Kravitz in some of his comments. And Martin Brundle actually comes out and defends Ted and says, for any avoidance of doubt, my friend and colleague for the past 26 years, Ted Kravitz, has my full support. Face-to-face dialogue is the only way to sort out issues and dispute in the relentless crucible of the Formula 1 paddock. We all have opinions and different jobs to do. That is life. So interesting, really. I wonder exactly what his implication is here. Face-to-face dialogue is the only way to sort out issues. I wonder whether he's suggesting that Red Bull should have, if they had a problem with the statements from Ted Kravitz and Sky Sports, they should have raised it to Sky Sports and said, look, we're not so happy with XYZ. Can you be a bit more impartial in future, or we're going to boycott you or something, rather than just doing the boycott straight up. I don't know if you guys think there's any validity to this, but I thought it was interesting to see the Sky camp kind of come in favour of Ted Kravitz here, and also worth mentioning because I think a few days ago I said that the notebooks seem to have disappeared from the YouTube, and they were disappearing from my YouTube. Like when I looked at Sky Sports F1, they weren't there anymore, but I checked about yesterday and they were all there again. So I don't know if that was just a glitch on my part, but the notebook is still back, baby. The other interesting part of this over the last 24 hours is this article here from Matthew Syed, who writes for The Times, kind of a Times provocative opinion piece writer on certain subjects, and this is his opinion on the Red Bull situation, saying that Christian Horner is tarnishing Formula 1. Red Bull broke the rules, but Horner says criticism is affecting the mental health of the team. This is blatant deflection technique, but also trivializes the difficulties of people with real mental health problems. Interesting discussion, really, because Horner does like to talk about mental health a fair bit, but he can come across as a bit of a hypocrite at times based on things he said after certain circumstances in the past. And it's an interesting question, right, because Horner, when the whole budget cap stuff came out, he was talking about that certain employees and family members were dealing with issues because they were getting called cheaters and stuff outside of work, and obviously this wasn't good for the team. Matthew's perspective here is that, well, look, you caused those problems yourself. It's your responsibility that those issues are arising. Nobody else's, because you guys are the ones that broke the rules at the end of the day. He's calling this deflection. So, of course, this is everyone's going to have their opinion on this, whether it's valid or not. And actually, Amanda Newey, wife, I suppose, of Adrian Newey, says the following: what qualifies you to judge me, my husband's, or any member or family members of Red Bull's mental state? When you get a year of abuse, you don't even work for the team. It wears you down. Provoking the fans with toxic journalism adds to the problem. So I don't really want to comment too much more on this, but I'm going to leave that there because the drama's everywhere right now. I just wish we could have more nice moments like this. You guys probably saw this actually after the Mexican Grand Prix, but you guys can see the cheering from the Red Bull pit wall here. The mechanics when Max wins the race, and then a few seconds later when Hamilton comes over the line, I thought it was kind of nice to see them clapping for Hamilton as well and giving their respect. And I just thought it's nice to see stuff like this, really. Just goes to show that Formula 1 at the end of the day, there's a community feel. They're giving their respect to Hamilton and Mercedes as a team, and then they're going to cheer for Checo as he comes over the line as well. So thought it was all rather nice. I wish we could get more stuff like this, to be perfectly honest. Let's talk Mercedes drivers. Firstly, Vesti is going to make his Formula 1 test debut. That's the thing with Mercedes right now. They no longer have De Vries because he's going to AlphaTauri. They no longer have Stoffel Van Dorn, their Formula E world champion, because he's going to Aston Martin as their kind of reserve guy, rejoining with Alonso after those McLaren days a few years ago. And now Vesti is going to be their guy. So there's some questions as to who their replacement's going to be. What is their pipeline, Mercedes, to replace Hamilton in the future? Like Russell, we imagine, is going to stay for quite some time, but we'll talk about the Ricciardo thing here in a second. So Vesti's going to come through, make his test debut in Abu Dhabi, and even Russell said the following here about Daniel Ricciardo over these rumours, that he's open to the opportunity and the chance of working with Ricciardo at Mercedes. I think Ted Kravitz actually mentioned this on a notebook maybe it was out in Austin, where he said that on the first day of the notebook, he said that Ricciardo to Red Bull was a likely possibility, and then the second day he said, scratch that, it's Ricciardo to Mercedes, that's what's happening here. And over the last 24 hours or so, we've heard further rumours backing up those claims. Hamilton is going to extend his deal with Toto Wolff. He reckons they're going to wait for the winter to acquire time, as they describe here, to sit down, extend the contract. Hamilton's not just going to compete next season in 2023, but potentially for a couple more years beyond that. He's talked about a multi-year extension. Hamilton will compete as long as he knows he's got what it takes to compete at the highest level. And Alonso's still showing at the age of 41, 42 that he's still got what it takes. So why can't Hamilton do exactly the same thing? The Ricciardo situation, though, is kind of interesting because we saw this past weekend. There still is the fire and ability within Daniel. He's obviously been wrestling and struggling hard with this car this year. Both Norris and Ricciardo have said that it's a bit of a nightmare to drive, and finally it was in a decent spot seemingly back in Mexico, and he delivered a great performance to get P7 best of the rest with some great overtakes towards the end of the race and some not so good overtakes on Yuki Tsunoda. As he described here, I will not be on the grid next season, but I do want to be in the sport. I still want to be working with a team with the ambition to be on the grid in 2024. That team is probably going to be Mercedes, Aussie, kind of German, as fastest pits to point out right here, suggesting this is a done deal. Now, I looked on Racing News 365 to see confirmation of this, and it doesn't seem like, it's not like a done deal. This hasn't been officially confirmed by the teams or Ricciardo or his agents or whatever, or Fabrizio Romano, but it's still effectively confirmed from a lot of people's perspective that this is happening very soon. Either the deal is signed or the deal is very close to being signed, and Ricciardo to Mercedes is going to be a thing. That is the extent of the rumours as they stand, but sources are suggesting, fastest pit stop, pretty reliable on this type of stuff, that he reckons that this is going to be happening. And even this is what kind of was discussion on Racing News 365 about Ricciardo thanking Russell. So quite some talk between the two of them the last few days. Basically what he's talking about here is at the end of the race that there was a possibility that Ocon was going to be able to get within that 10-second window that was going to allow him to, the 10-second penalty was going to drop him behind Ocon. He didn't want that to happen. So it looked like he was going to get blue flags for George Russell, and therefore he was going to have to drop back a couple of seconds to let him overtake. That might have cost him the 10-second window, right, with those blue flags. But it turns out right at the end, Russell came into the pits, right, for a new set of soft tyres, so he didn't have to slow down. Ricciardo could extend that 10-second gap and got away with it, and says, I'm pretty grateful for George for that. I'll buy him a beer after the race. So already these guys do seem to be having a little bit of a relationship ongoing there, possibly indicating there is something to come over there at Mercedes going forwards. Is this the right move for Ricciardo and Mercedes, right, is another question. I think they'll be, Ricciardo's a fantastic driver, right? On his day, this guy's one of the best of the recent generation. Sad to see the way this season has gone for him. And Jensen Button says the only way realistically to get back into Formula 1 was to go into a team, work hard, show people what you could do in a car that maybe suits you better than that McLaren did, and then people forget about what happened the year before. This, I think, is probably true, but at the same time, is Ricciardo making a mistake going to be the reserve driver for Mercedes, in case something happens over there, contest with Mercedes, build up those relationships? And Mercedes have done a pretty good job as well with their other drivers, De Vries and such, getting him the opportunities. If something goes wrong, Ricciardo can step into, De Vries got lucky this year where Albon was unwell. He stepped in for Monza, got the job done, got some points, and all of a sudden he's got a seat for next year in Formula 1. The same thing could happen to Ricciardo. They've got the connections, Mercedes. They might be able to help Ricciardo out in that sense, as he potentially could help them out. But it's highly unlikely that Ricciardo is going to go from being a reserve driver for Mercedes straight into their lineup, right? There's no way that Lewis or George are going anywhere over the next couple of years. Hamilton will stay as long as he wants to, and George Russell is their next man to become their future world champion. That is the intention. And by the time Hamilton retires, Ricciardo's probably not going to be there anymore. Either he's gone to IndyCar or he's still in Formula 1 in another team. I don't know. So intrigued to your thoughts. If he does join Mercedes as the reserve man, is that actually a good move for Ricciardo? I'm not so convinced. The seat at Haas was open if you wanted the Haas seat. Now, of course, Haas are in an interesting spot because they started the season strong. They fell off massively. They don't have the budget in previous seasons to even hit the budget cap. Now they do with a new sponsor. So, and that seat, I think even Gunter said that, well, look, the seat is open, Daniel, if you want to have a discussion. But he doesn't want to have that discussion. He'd prefer not to go to Haas, and I guess he'd prefer a drive in the Alpine, right, that's now gone to Gasly, or maybe even the Aston Martin that's now gone to Alonso. But he really didn't want to engage in any discussions over that Haas seat that's now going to be gone anyway to, we believe, Nico Hülkenberg, despite Steiner defending Mick Schumacher over the last few days. So do you think this is going to get locked in soon? Will Daniel Ricciardo be a good reserve guy for Mercedes? I think he will. I think it's going to be a good partnership there. But is it good for Daniel Ricciardo's career? Not necessarily, but it's still, I think, good to have him around the paddock, right? Because a really entertaining personality, one of the best of hand in Formula One since the Drive to Survive era as well. I would say that Ricciardo is probably, one of the biggest personalities, if not arguably the biggest personality that people know from that particular series, and understandably so. And it's good to at least still have him around the paddock to some degree. Just a quick point to note, because Alonso said after Mexico when his engine blew up yet again, I think the poor man has had like 3 retirements in the last 5 races. Alpine have said it's luck of the draw, mate. Unlucky sunshine, your engine blew up. It's not our fault. It's just unfortunate that it was you and not Ocon. Of course, some theories have been roving around as to whether there's anything behind this, right? And whether Alonso is actually getting sabotaged here. But the Alpine engine hasn't been the most reliable. They're obviously trying to upgrade it going into next season in terms of reliability, which they are allowed to do. You can't upgrade performance, you can increase reliability. So there's that discussion there to be had with Alpine going forwards. But I know some people are wondering, well, look, if Alonso goes into Aston Martin next year and all of a sudden that Mercedes engine starts having issues for him and, he gets a load of retirements and Lance Stroll doesn't, then all of a sudden, the tinfoil hats are probably going to come out in full force at that point. And just to say this, because I thought it was kind of a nice feature, all the world champions on the grid right now, Verstappen, Hamilton, Vettel and Alonso, all led at least 1 lap this season. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.